The wind howled across the empty plains, carrying dust and sorrow through the ghostly remains of what once was a home. The farmhouse that had stood proud against the Montana sky was now little more than charred timber and ashes. Sarah Whitlock stood at the edge of it all, her shawl clutched tightly around her shoulders, watching the smoke rise into the crimson horizon. Everything she'd known, her husband, her little boy, her land, had been swallowed by the fire. It happened fast. Bandits passing through, desperate for supplies, had torched the place when her husband refused to give up their horses. The sheriff promised justice, but Sarah knew better. Justice didn't ride fast enough out here. It came late, if at all. And by then, grief had already taken root deep inside. For days she wandered with nothing but her son's small toy horse in her hand and a revolver tucked into her belt. Her boots carried her down the long trail toward nowhere, just a horizon in the whisper of wind. Folks she passed looked at her with pity or fear. Some offered food, some turned away. The West was hard, and hearts were harder. By the time she reached the town of Dry River, Sarah was half-starved and near collapse. The town was a mix of faded dreams, a few saloons, a church that leaned to one side, and men who had the look of people running from something. She stopped outside the livery where a tall man was fixing a saddle. His hands were scarred, his eyes pale as the morning frost. "You lookin' for work?" he asked without looking up. Sarah hesitated. "I'm lookin' for something," she said softly. He glanced at her then, really looked. Whatever he saw in her face made him nod toward the stables. "You can start by brushing down the horses. Pays low, but it's honest." His name was Ethan Cole, a ranch hand who kept mostly to himself. Over the next weeks, Sarah worked from dawn till the stars came out, her hands raw, her heart numb. But there was something in the rhythm of the work, the smell of hay, the snort of the horses, the quiet respect in Ethan's nods, that began to steady her. One evening, as the sun melted into gold across the hills, Ethan found her sitting on the fence, watching the herd graze. He handed her a tin cup of coffee and said, "You ride?" "Used to," she answered. He smiled faintly. "Then you still do." That night, under the open sky, Sarah rode for the first time since the fire. The wind whipped through her hair, the land stretched wide beneath her, and for the first time in months, she felt something stir, not joy exactly, but life. Days turned into months. She learned to mend fences, herd cattle, shoot straighter than most men in town. People began to talk. The woman who worked harder than any man, who laughed again, who found her strength in the same land that once took everything from her. One morning, word came that the same bandits who burned her home had been seen near the canyon. The sheriff was gathering a posse. Without hesitation, Sarah saddled her horse. Ethan tried to stop her, but she only met his gaze and said, "I lost everything once. I'm not losing myself again." They rode out together. The trail was long and the confrontation brutal. By the end of it, the men who'd ruined her life lay bound and beaten, and Sarah stood tall beneath the rising sun, her revolver steady in her hand. When it was over, she didn't cry. She just looked out across the wild stretch of land, the same unforgiving place that had taken her family, and felt the faint warmth of peace in her chest. Months later, Sarah and Ethan started a small ranch by the riverbank, the same place she'd once wandered through lost and broken. The days were hard, but they were hers. She planted new roots, built new fences, and learned to smile. Again, every evening, as the sun dipped low, she'd ride out to the ridge and whisper into the wind, for her husband, for her son, for the life that burned away and the one that rose from the ashes. She had lost everything once. But in the heart of the untamed West, Sarah Whitlock found something stronger than grief. She found herself, and a new beginning.